Welcome to BeProvided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our new season of BeProvided Conservation Radio. Today we are sharing the story of the great apes that share 97% of human DNA, the orangutans. Leif Cocks, founder of the Orangutan Project, global orangutan expert, and Orangutan Whisperer, regards these great apes as the most noble people on our planet. Leif has just received one of Australia's highest honors, the Medal of the Order of Australia for services in conservation. And today he will be the one telling the story of his friends living in the rainforest. He will also share his story on how, even after 30 years, he continues to work to improve the welfare of orangutans in captivity and ensure their survival in the wild. So good morning and welcome to the show, Leif. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Thank you. I believe you are in Perth, Australia right now?
Yep. I'm just back for a short while from Kalimantan, Indonesia, and the next week or so I'll be back up.
Oh, great. Okay. So are your times in Perth shorter these days since you're working so much out in the field?
Yeah. Unfortunately, and I think it's the same with our global situation. To save the orangutans and the other species that should have that, we really got 10 years to turn it around.
Wow.
So unfortunately, not much opportunity for breaks and relaxation, because this next 10 years is probably going to be the most critical in human history, because it will determine whether we can hand over a viable planet, in the case of orangutans, viable ecosystems to future generations.
Right. Yeah, I know, and that's not a lot of time that we have to get our act together here and do this. Yeah, all animals are facing such demise right now, and our climate and planet in general.
Oh, look, I guess we've got our backs up against the wall.
Yeah,
and that's why we've got about 10 years in which that time we could piece together and have viable ecosystems survive as almost arcs of biodiversity and megafauna that we can pass on to future generations. After that, we may have rainforests, we may have orangutans, but those ecosystems and those species will be doomed to extinction over time. And what we're seeing is, more global warming is causing the destruction of rainforests and all the transport systems and world combined. And then we see that feedback loop where we're having massive droughts, where the rivers are drying up in Indonesia. And therefore you gain less fruits, less flowers. The fires are becoming more intense. And so you get these feedback loops, which causes more destruction, which causes more global warming, which causes more destruction. And this is why, it's so much more, when you understand these feedback loops and in the connectivity of everything, it just adds to the explanation of why things are so urgent at the moment.
Right. I know it's very dire right now. I want you to share a little bit of your story as we go forward, and we can talk more about the orangutans. But I was currently reading your book. I just received it, The Orangutans, My Cousins, My Friends. And I find your journey with your passion and getting involved with the orangutans intriguing. And the first quote in your book, in the introduction by Joseph Campbell, says that we must be willing to let go of the life we plan so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And I was curious by that. Did you have any difficulty letting go of part of your life to work with animals, or was this just a natural transition for you?
I always had a interest in working with animals, but came to understand it's far more important to work for animals, and for other living beings and their welfare, and so that's obviously a transition. I may work with animals and with people, but ultimately I work for them, and that's an important transition. in a broader context, I probably stayed too long working with captive orangutans because of my personal attachment to them, and concern for them as individuals. And so, there had to be obviously a growth stage to go into the biggest, in a sense, arena, I guess, in a sense, to make more significant welfare and conservation outcomes for entire species.
Right. Yeah, you began your work, was it right after school? You worked with the Perth Zoo, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and so you were working with all sorts of animals. From just what I've read of the book so far, that you didn't start in with primates, you started with birds and found them maybe, I don't know if boring is the right word, but not interesting. And then you shared some eye-opening experiences you had with the big cats. I think with the leopard fury comes to mind. But how did you transfer? How did you get involved with the primate section and working with orangutans?
I guess at the time I was a rather unique experiment at the zoo because I was the first person they ever employed with a university degree, and the Charlie, who had been looking after orangutans for 20 years, retired, and they asked me, "Do you want to go over and look after these orangutans?" Because no one else, because it was the hardest job in the zoo at the time. No one else wanted to do it, and I jumped at it. And the other unfortunate thing is I really wasn't given any training. I basically showed one morning how to open the slides and open the doors and where the orangutans was, and then given no training, which was a wonderful opportunity, especially in those days. There was no health and safety or that sort of stuff.
Oh, interesting.
So I started just working in with them and discover them for myself, for what they were. I would go in, have my lunch with them and interact with them, be inside with them when they're having the babies, and bring them on the journey of life, and eventually, obviously, back into the wild. And that gave me a unique, unbiased insight, I guess, into these wonderful persons that were held captive, although committed no crimes. Right.
So how did some of these orangutans, and I'm sure like other animals, how did they get to the zoo to that point?
They were originally collected by the superintendent of the zoo in 1968. He went and collected orangutans from the Johor Zoo and brought back Puan, Akjir, and Mawas, three animals which were to start the colony, and because we decided to respect their natural social system, and give them the much of love and support, as we could in that situation, that the colony quickly grew to the most successful breeding colony in the world, with all the health and longevity records that were you're able to achieve, at least in the captive situation. But ultimately, they cannot fully reach their potential of health and longevity unless we can return them back to the wild.
Are they able to go back out into the wild after such human interaction or being raised with humans around them?
Yeah. They can, and we've demonstrated that bringing them back from the zoo into the wild, into an area that we're re-establishing. The population went extinct in the 1830s. Now, the reason why this misconception is all that kind of idea about imprinting, doesn't make sense, and human connection and that sort of stuff really belongs in the world of lower animals. And people think, well, orangutans are animals and should be applied. They're not animals, they're persons. You know what I mean? They're highly intelligent persons, and they adapt to the environment predominantly not by natural selection, but by culture, and they have minds. Doesn't make sense. And the most important thing, what we demonstrated with bringing orangutans back, is their mental health is critically important to the ability to adapt to environment, just as it is with the human species. And so the idea that they're imprinted with humans, that's something that doesn't belong in the realm of persons. They know, obviously, persons, and they obviously knew me intimately.
Right.
But that actually helped me take them on that journey, give them that support as they adapted to the wild environment, which it wasn't a negative, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And they understood the difference between different people. Some people are good, some people are bad. They understood that they were an orangutan already living with 25 other orangutans. So it's just to understand that the persons, and therefore it's a bit like adapting a person who, let's say, for example, who's been in prison for the first part of their lives, and they're institutionalized and that sort of stuff. It's the same process to take an orangutan back to the wild, which is very different when we're talking about maybe releasing, lower intelligent animals into the wild.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they're very intuitive. So you mentioned they can tell when a person is good or bad. Did you have experiences when they could tell when you were upset or sad or sick or something like that? Did they console you? Did they reach out to you? Things like that? Did you find that they would react to you that way? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're very, very pathetic, and very loving. And this is in a broader context, as far as a morality. Mm-hmm. I term that as a more noble form of person that shares our planet, in a sense, better persons than the humans, which become to dominate the world today, and which doubles, the tragedy, and that we've been driving them to extinction in the most brutal way possible, and not allowing them to survive this extinction crisis and live free in their own cultures.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned in the zoo you developed these deep relationships with orangutans, deep bonds. You actually helped raise one from being a small being to an adult, I believe, right? I forgot her name. Was it Satari or
Sakara?
Sakara, yeah. Sorry, yeah. I meant to write that down. So, yeah, how was that? Was that just a pivotal moment in your life working with these animals? Yeah,
it was certainly wonderful. I mean, it's one of those life twists. As a young man, I expected to be an orangutan mother, but that's what happened. And yeah, when they're born, and I'm normally with the ones when they're born, trying to be there. They come out, and within 48 hours, the mother makes them hold my finger, and I believe that's related to the bonding exercise. And when Sakara got injured and she had to be treated for those injuries outside of away from her mother, because I've been with her since birth, it was a relatively easy transition to take over the mother's position, and care and nurse for her and that sort of stuff. And when she got well, I could also give her back to her mum, who then started nursing her again, and continue that relationship with both mother and baby, because again, they're not animals. They understood. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. I took the baby away with love and compassion, and for their sake, and gave it back for the same reasons. And so it's obviously a beautiful time.
Oh yeah, what a wonderful experience. So you were actually, I believe, part of the process for speaking up for an orangutan named Sandra, who was in Argentina at the time, to grant her personhood. Mm-hmm. Is that true? How did that process begin?
I testified in Argentine court as an expert witness on behalf of Sandra.
Oh, okay.
And and obviously my job was convince the court that despite Sandra not being human, she was a person. Mm-hmm. Personhood is not an exclusive domain of the human species. and therefore that, holding her in captivity, when she hasn't committed a crime is not right. And luckily, the court was persuaded by the case, and she was granted personhood.
Interesting.
And then returning to the process, recommended that, she couldn't go back to the wild. She became overly institutionalized and was a hybrid between two species. That we had to find a better solution for her, and then recommended that she go to America to an orangutan and great ape sanctuary where she could get first-class care and choose to interact with a variety of other orangutans in order for her to get the best life possible given the circumstances that she was found in.
Right. Was she born in captivity then? You said she was a blend of two different species, right?
Yeah, between smart and Borneo species, and born in Germany and before Argentina.
Okay. And I think she just turned 34 from what I read.
Yeah.
Oh, good. How long do orangutans live?
The real answer is we don't know. We've been studying for about 45 years, and orangutans, which were old and looking old 45 years ago, are still alive today.
Wow.
We know from their natural history they probably have to at least survive into the early 60s. Otherwise, the population would simply collapse. When I did my master's research on the health and longevity of orangutans 10 years ago, the average age of an orangutan was dying in captivity was about 12, after even taking out high infant mortality. And so I think because a lot of information comes from zoos, and orangutan dies at 45, they call it dying of old age. But what it is dying is a long-term chronic stress by living in inappropriate environments, the same as humans.
Yeah.
It's not the short-term, peak stress that is most dangerous to us. It's a long-term chronic stress, and orangutans are no different to that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, depression, like we would feel like in prison, like you said. Poor thing. Yeah, I remember. I don't want to give too many stories away so people read your book, but you were talking about in your book that I believe it's Sing Sing that was the first orangutan. Is that the first one you worked with that had diabetes from being served too many sugar treats for high tea in a prior zoo or something like that?
Exactly. Orangutans are very susceptible to diabetes because evolutionarily they don't have to adapt against it because they never have bad diets, obviously, in the wild.
Right.
And Sing Sing coming from, the tea party with orangutans at Singapore Zoo had diabetes. So I had the job training a large male orangutan within 6 weeks to take his blood, test it, and give injections every day. Otherwise, he was going to die.
Wow.
So that was my challenge at the time.
Wow. Did he actually recover?
Yes. I managed to do it.
Great.
And he lived for decades after that time, getting his treatment. And we actually joined him up as a card-carrying member of the Diabetes Society. She gave him access to a lot of good opportunities there for his health and treatment.
Yeah.
Because they're fundamentally that internally and biologically that they're so similar to humans that medical treatments are always identical.
Yeah. So they can take in insulin. Do they need insulin like we do when we're diabetic as humans? Similar.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of brought home how close they are to, I knew they were anyways, to humans, What other ways are they closely related to humans? I know they raise their children or their young, very closely for a long time, like we would keep our kids around for so many years to watch over them. What other similarities are there?
The main thing is that I mentioned before they adapt to the environment through culture, and they do that through this loving upbringing of the mother to child over a very long period. they nurse their babies for 8 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And with the smarter orangutan, as an example, they have 15 years between individual infants. And this is to program them for the unique culture to adapt to the environment. So they're born helpless with a vacant brain like we are, and use culture passed down from generation to generation in order to most efficiently adapt to the environment.
Wow.
And they're highly intelligent, and in their own way, they're more intelligent than humans. Because intelligence is something you've got to be very careful how much you have and where you have it, because the brain is this energy-hungry machine. And you can quickly go extinct in the wild by having a large brain that's not required, because you require so much more energy to maintain it. Mm-hmm. So we're all intelligent in very specific ways for evolutionary survival. And orangutans, for example, their temporal spatial map, which they understand and learn about the environment they live in, is far beyond human capacity. In other ways, humans are more intelligent, but in other ways, they're more intelligent. It's a wonderful discovery of, to see sometimes that our arrogance, does that make sense? Because we naturally always measure, even culturally, between humans, we measure intelligence with our own cultural, bias.
Right. Right.
But when we open up our minds, we see that we're actually not that special.
Right. Definitely. Well, that's understandable. Yeah, that they have a little more instinct for survival, and so do they only have one offspring, one baby at a time, or can they have twins?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly the same as humans. So
okay.
You think of the menstrual cycle, think of the gestation, almost identical. They have twins at exactly the same rate of humans. The only thing they would do is their child mortality and mother mortality at birth is far lower than you would experience in humans in poor societies. And in fact, the chances of a mother orangutan dying in the wild today is exactly the same as the chance of a mother dying in the United States today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. And you mentioned that I think I caught this right, that they have one child. Is it one baby every 15 years?
Yes, for the different species have different averaging the birth intervals.
Okay.
But the Sumatran, just to quote one, is 15 years between individual infants.
Wow.
They're in fact the slowest reproducing species in the world, which is one of the reasons they're so prone to extinction.
Right.
Is because intelligent persons, such as humans, orangutans, elephants, they adapt to the environment through culture, so they have to have few offspring with long childhoods in order to program culture, rather than being born, pretty much, ready to go with instinct. But unfortunately, this means you're very prone to extinction if you have a predator comes along. And unfortunately for the other person that share our planet, the super predator has come along, i.e. us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of us. Yeah. So, what is the natural predator for the orangutan? Is it would it be a jaguar or leopard or?
In practice, because they adapt to the environment so well, there is no natural predator for the orangutan.
Oh, okay.
But when you're reintroducing orangutans back in the wild where they don't have the culture, the things we have to worry about are, let's say, tigers, the Orangutan tiger. This is one of the reasons that we never leave them alone unless they're making a night mess at night.
Yeah.
Because the ground is extremely dangerous. Other things would be snakes, which is one of the few things within humans and orangutans we have an instinctual fear of snakes. So that doesn't have to be taught.
I guess we can go into talking about, you talked about some of the challenges that the orangutans are facing. Can you talk a little bit more and share what challenges they're facing for their survival?
The ultimate problem is that their rainforest home is being destroyed for unsustainable forms of monocultures such as palm oil, pulp paper, and rubber. And therefore they're killed during the process or killed afterwards, agricultural pests. And of course, without rainforests, they cannot survive. And that's been destroyed at a huge rate. And of course, this is, as I mentioned before, this is helping destroy the entire planet for no good reason, because the monocultures that replace it are all unsustainable.
Right.
So it makes no long-term economic as well as environmental reason for this being done. It only fills a pocket of a greedy few in the short term, but it affects the orangutans, the indigenous communities, the local people, and the entire planet with this short-term greed.
Geez, I know, it's really sad. How many orangutans are left in the wild? Can you estimate that or answer that roughly?
Look, the estimates are really loose because, if the answer is, when I quote figures, people probably have the impression that someone's gone around and counted them. And that's really true. How we kind of, our best guess is to go through a sample of rainforest and count the number of nests. And use a formula to calculate how many orangutans would probably be there because that number of nests, and then extrapolate into the areas we can't afford to survey. The most critically endangered, the Tapanuli orangutan, which is a new species discovered less than 10 years ago. And there's about 800 left.
Oh, my.
The Smarten orangutan is about 14,000 left. And about 1,000 being killed a year. The Bornean orangutan, which has 3 subspecies, has 55,000 left, but there's 5,000 to 6,000 a year being killed. So all of them are critically endangered according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And hanging on. And the real answer is, ultimately. We don't know how many orangutans are left, but we know the situation is dire.
Yeah. So you mentioned nests. So they actually live in nests up, like high up in the rainforest canopy. Is that correct?
Exactly. They make a new nest every night, and they sleep on the side like we do.
Okay.
If it's raining, they make a rain nest, which basically they make an umbrella on top of themselves, because they don't want to get wet, just like we do.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And actually, I saw one of your videos. I think there was you were carrying a baby through the orangutan jungle school, and it started to rain, and it looked like one of them covered themselves with a big leaf. And I'm like, oh, they protect themselves, from the rain too. That was cute. But anyways, yeah, it is. It's a really dire situation, and I want to talk more about what you're doing with the Orangutan Project and how that got going, and how you're addressing some of these challenges.
It started in 1998. I started it with a small group of friends, and it started from there, expanding it, and obviously trying to reach and connect with more people in order to support us. And then developing projects in the field, in orangutan habitat, in order for them to survive. Ultimately, after a long period of time, of understanding the situation, the economic, social, and environmental situation that the orangutans are under, we believe that addressing businesses is not effective. The government is certainly not effective. Focusing on particular products derived from the former rainforest is not effective. The effective answer that we've discovered is to identify several ecosystems that can be saved, piece together those ecosystems to the right size, shape, and type of rainforest, and apply the right formula of conservation, whether it's rangers, community development, government liaison, research, reforestation, in the right type of reaction, in the right dosage, in order to create ecosystems that can survive the extinction crisis. The broad brush generic approaches always just seem to have no effect on the ground.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, like you mentioned, you're probably working with the indigenous cultures involved with the rainforest. They're going to be the communities that are going to benefit from the protection of all this, I think. So it seems like you're working with them and
exactly, because we have communities which are still hunter-gatherers, and the children are starving because they can't find enough food because the multinationals have taken all the land. And actually, people think that this process is wildlife versus people, or the environment versus economy. Yeah. But in the ecosystems that we have gained control over, we are now feeding the children. They come to school, we give them breakfast, we're giving them education, and we're going to give them free education as far as they can go. They can become doctors and lawyers. We give them lunch. We're increasing their nutrition. We are developing sustainable economies. We've already started producing jungle honey,
Oh, interesting,
which we're selling. And we started planting vanilla under the rainforest canopy. And we're getting local women. We bought them a kitchen to develop recipes, which we're then marketing and selling. And we can actually produce within the rainforest canopy with the indigenous communities sustainable economies where they get rich, their children prosper. And so you get this wonderful win-win solution when we extend our compassion and love to all living beings.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, that sounds like a great way to approach that, and successful too. So how much success have you seen with this? I don't know if it can be measured, or do you have a particular story of success to share?
What we're trying to do at the moment is we're at various stages with about 5 ecosystems of legally getting the management rights to it, negotiating with businesses to give up key areas, and then developing relationships with the local communities, for win-win solutions for all of them, and the longest running of these projects is Bukit Tigapulu, where the orangutans went extinct in the 1830s. And we're partnered with other great organizations, because we never go alone. We're successful as a species because we cooperate with others, not compete.
Right.
The Darwinian idea of competition is really a misunderstanding of it. And so we cooperate with many other bona fide organizations to achieve these outcomes. But there we've managed to reestablish the first 180 animals to form a core of the eventual population of 2,000 orangutans. And we're also ready to call and protecting 150 elephants, which live in the lowlands. And then we're working with the local communities to stop human-elephant conflict, so the elephants and people can prosper together. We are patrolling and stopping the illegal criminal syndicates who seek to come and kill the tigers for their body parts, as well as develop the economic future. And the wonderful thing is, it costs us a lot of money to achieve establishing these ecosystems, but we're demonstrating within 7 to 10 years of us being able to manage these ecosystems with our partners, we can make them economically self-sustainable. where people prosper, they're actually better off, and certainly children are better off. And that's going to be our legacy to pass on to future generations. These functioning ecosystems that will look after themselves,
right,
economically. As we know, we need to do a lot more beyond the next 10, 20 years, or at least beyond our working lifetimes. But at least we'll give them the basis, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The biological resources in order that won't have been destroyed through extinction to allow that to happen. And we don't have to do much. For example, if we only need 10% of the world agricultural systems today, if we all became vegan and lived a healthier lifestyle. And imagine what was 90% of the agriculture today that could be returned to wilderness, to support the environment, stop global warming, and rewild, the planet, in order that, it becomes this wonderful place, not only for, the different species that can occupy that, but for humans as well.
For everybody, yeah. Yeah, there's so much land taken up just to feed, corn-fed cows, or, especially here in the U.S., and that could be used for good sustainable farming practices. It's really...
Yeah, and if you want to read another book, my latest one, Finding Our Humanity, goes more deeply into that and some of the solutions, and about the human condition, and comparing that to our other close relatives, such as the orangutan and chimpanzee.
Oh, great. Yeah. And you have 2 other books out, right? You have that book and...
the other one is Orangutans in the Battle for Survival.
Yeah, I'll definitely post links to these on the show notes as well, so people can have access to them too. So, well, that's interesting. Yeah, there's just so much to ask. So I know that you're doing a lot with the Orangutan Project, and kind of rewilding orangutans too. You put them through a little jungle school. You're actually rescuing some that have been captured for pet trade as well. That sounds like that's a big problem as well.
It's not the main problem, but still a significant problem.
Yeah.
And so we're doing a lot of work at the moment to counteract that, in order to eliminate that as an issue, just killing orangutans. But we also doing it for 2 other reasons. One is the compassion for the individual persons, which are caught up in this, because it's not about individuals versus the group. And it's also because the orangutan populations are in such dire conditions, every individual counts. Every individual contains a small part of the biodiversity, which increases the possibility of the species' survival into the future.
So can you tell us more about ecotourism? And I think that's probably very successful in getting people aware of what's going on as well. So can you talk a little bit about some of your ecotours and what those are doing?
Yeah. I do quite a few ecotours. The first reason is the factor most holding us back from achieving more is the lack of funds. The second reason is to connect people to the wild and to the cause, but more importantly, connect them in the right way. Most people innocently, naively go to tourist traps, which pose as conservation, where the animals are exploited and the environment is negatively affected by the activity. And so we connect them with genuine, real conservation and a real experience which supports the economic structure that we're creating for the ecosystems and orangutans to survive. And because orangutans are such wonderful persons, we often provide a unique life-changing experience for people. So I find that the people who come on the ecotours they get a great personal benefit to it, as well as the opportunity to altruistically give, in a sense, for survival of another person that shares our planet, as well as the planet itself.
That's so. On these tours, do people actually get involved with, like actually getting involved with doing some conservation work, or are they going out and kind of viewing these orangutans in the wild? And are you sharing like how to look at the food that they're eating, or how to look for nests, or different things like that, like kind of a hands-on experience is what I'm asking, I guess. Yeah.
We have different tours at different levels for different people. But I always try to get some quality rainforest time following wild orangutans, because often if you see them in a zoo, they're ugly caricature of the magnificent. So it's a bit like going to a prison or a mental hospital and saying, well, let's have a look at these humans and make decisions about what they like. And so see him in that magnificence in the wild, and I give talks, 5 or 6 talks, and taking them on that journey to fully understand what they're seeing, and appreciating that. And of course, the money that is made from the tours goes straight back into conservation. And of course, we love to do things like everyone planting a tree, and having that kind of hands-on, visceral kind of connection with healing the earth, and bringing back the environment.
That's great. And that they're going back home to talk about this and share it, and share their passion. That's a great way to get the story, to get the word out, I think, and get hopefully more donations ultimately towards the cause. What other ways can people help, do their part in this dire situation? Like, what can we do, like here in America, or, I know we can donate and go on ecotours. Is there anything else that you would recommend?
Other things would be to connect with us on social media, either my own social media, Leif .orangutan, or the Orangutan Project, and just be, and share that with your friends. The books, read the books, and a lot of people, wonderful people, they join a chapter or start a chapter, doing events and running stalls at markets, and connecting with people. And so all of us usually has either we're time poor, but we have a little bit of money that we could give back. And of course, we're all a little bit more wealthier because of the exploitation of the environment and the orangutan's environment. So we give a little bit of that back, we can make a huge amount of difference to so many. But if we're money poor, we often have being time rich, and we can give back through activities such as fundraising and that sort of stuff, and connecting with other people about the need, not only for the orangutan but for us, to save the rainforest home.
Right. Yeah, because like you said, you're not only saving the orangutan, you're saving like a whole ecosystem and indigenous cultures and richness going on. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I started the podcast. My pockets are only so deep, and so sharing a podcast and sharing stories and getting the word out there is a way for me too. Yeah. So
one of the beauty of this whole process is becoming more altruistic, and find that love in your heart, and having a attitude of giving, if that makes sense, and love within, and which is what I try to express in my books, is it actually makes you happier. And it's like there is no sacrifice. Doesn't make sense. If I can touch your heart through my books, my ecotour and the connections, and you become a more loving, giving person, and therefore you actually do help more, in this world, you actually become happier and more fulfilled, you know, and have a more rewarding life. And so this process of there is no downside to it, which is one of the most amazing things, and we can undertake something which is absolutely no downside for us, other species on the planet, and of course our grandchildren.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree. That's great. So I know your time is precious, and I know I could talk to you about this forever, but I do really enjoy your book, and I enjoy talking to you, and I do follow you on social media, and I'll share all this information. But I was curious, like I always ask people I interview, what gives you the most hope going forward?
Well, I think certainly the achievement is possible, and we need a lot more money to do that. But that money is not ridiculous compared to the world situation. So there's every reasonable expectation that we could achieve it if we can achieve enough support. However, in a broader context, I'm not a big fan of hope. I think hope comes with its partner despair.
Right, that's true. That does.
The reason why I do this, and I suggest why anyone should do this, is if you find that love in your heart, you naturally have to express it. And the only decision you have to make is, how do I express it in the most intelligent way possible? Because indiscriminate charity doesn't do anything. That makes sense? And so there's no hope in the process. There's love in my heart. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I'm expressing love that has to get out in the most intelligent way that's available to me. And that is saving the orangutan and its rainforest for every being that shares this planet. And so it doesn't make sense. And that's the driver. Obviously intelligently applying that in the way that's going to provide the most success. Similarly, if you're miserable and you're unhappy, you're going to create misery.
Sure.
You can try to save the world. Does that make sense? You create organizations that start infighting with other organizations, competing for name, fame, and reputation, and eventually destroy everything you create.
Yeah.
If you want longevity and you want to really achieve things in the world and never get worn out, you're never going to go through the cycle of hope and despair and burn out. You find that love within your heart, and you have the energy, you have the durability, to give back to the world while gaining so much.
Yeah, and you obviously doing this for over 3 decades right now. So that's wonderful. That's a good way to put it. A great way to end this conversation, I think, on that note. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for listening to BeProvided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to BeProvided Conservation Radio.